Right, time to cut this steel. Let's change this over to a metal blade. These are left-handed thread. Lost the tooth as well. I'll have to get a new one of these soon. This has had an absolute hammer in this blade. Alrighty, time to make a metal frame for underneath this table. So we're just using up some of the scrap material we've got. So I've got to cut these at 1600. These will be our main beams underneath. So that's why we kind of designed the size of the table we have, just to use up some of this material that we've got. Right, quickly cut them off. I'll use the angle grinder because it's got a bit of a lip on it here and the circular saw won't sit flush on the fence, so I'll just zip them off quickly with a little grinder. Quite a bit of rubbish in the bottom of there, but the rest of this pipe's going to be okay. It's got plenty of meat on it. It's just had a bit of surface corrosion inside. It's only for a table which is going to be out of the weather pretty much, so it should still do the job. Alright, so the width of this table is going to be 600 wide. So this is just the frame underneath. These two rails will be on the edge of the table, so I just need a couple of bits to fill in between. Right, it always feels wrong using a circular saw to cut steel, but anyway. Does a nice job though. Alright, so I'll cut these inside ones at 520, and now, so outside to outside, pretty close to 600. So that's going to be okay. Remembering I've got a covering that's going to go over the board. So what I need to do is cut two end ones, which have got to be pretty much 600 now. So I'm going to cut two of those, and then we'll get this welded up. Okay, we'll get this welded up. I'm just using some gasless wire here, a little SIG weld. Got a bit of a jig set up here on the table, so I'll get these whacked together. So I've just welded all the corners together, and I've got it square, and we do that by just measuring diagonally. It's spot on. So that worked out quite well. Nice. So what I'm going to do now is weld in the cross braces in the centre, and yeah, that'll be where the sink sits, and also a little bit of support where we join that bit of timber. dog of a stuff to weld. It's like welding rusty Coke cans. But anyway, that'll seal up alright. Right, I'll take this clamps off. It's been a little while. Right, I've just got a frame temporary here that we've made. Just chuck the board on top of that. So I've made this board about 5mm longer too, which I can trim back if I need to. So the plan is that'll sit like that. Gee, I hope it's going to be strong enough by the time I put a little brim or something on there. Right, so that's the frame. So I've got the sink, which should still drop in, no worries. Like that. That'll clamp down. So frame, we've got a main beam there, main beam under there to support that join, and then we'll get some stainless covering the whole thing all the way down the sides. It'll come like that, up the top with a splashback. Then I can get the hose and blast things off, and yeah, that should look alright. So the next job is to get this frame mounted onto that bit of pipe outside. Okay, so that's roughly how this table's going to go. I've just got it wedged up there, just temporary on some temporary scaffolding type stuff. A few wedges here and there, and yeah, we just got to work out exactly where it's going to fit. So we've got a distance right between where it has to go. Our level, this will get adjusted a little bit later. I've got it slightly, and I'm talking slightly, like 3-4mm higher this end. So when we've got our stainless steel here, any moisture or water that's going to run anywhere, I want it to go that way to the sink. I don't want it coming to me either. So that can be a little bit higher this end, and same this way. I've actually got it slightly higher. I'm only talking a couple of mil this end. So any water will go back to the splashback and then run down into the sink, because this is be the main area that'll be filleting things. So that's kind of pretty right as far as height goes. I've worked it out too. That's kind of a nice height for where I want to work. You can have them too low, you end up being hunched over. Too high, you end up getting water all the time. So anyway, so the trick is, I was going to try and make this all nice underneath so there's no legs. So I'm going to try and work out how I'm going to go from this steel back to that post, and I'm hoping it doesn't rock a bit, and if it does, all I've got to do is pin it to the shed, and that'll take a bit of that slop out. Really all it's doing is taking the weight of this steel. So once I get it exactly where I want it, I'll tack weld some of these legs on, just using some offcuts of steel that I've got laying around. I'm trying not to go back to the steel place if I can help it. I want to use up all the bits of scrap I've got. So I'll make a basically a bit of steel that goes from the edges to that main centre pipe, and hopefully it doesn't rock around and flex too much, but like I said, I'll pin it if it does. So that's where we're at the moment. So what the idea is to try, this is obviously underneath, I want to try and use this mounting plate here, which is quite solid. That's concreted in. I'll put another plate on top here and bolt that on, so if I ever do want to shift this sink for some reason, I can just unbolt 4 bolts and take the thing away if I need to get into a shed or something a bit more serious. So what the plan is I'm going to try and get up under here somewhere, put a brackets like that, back to this plate, and do 4 of those, and it just means it's going to clean up the hole underneath, so I can hose that out without it getting hooked on legs and bits and pieces and stuff. So the trick is I've got to get around this sink. So I'll go up to the frame up the back, and then back to this pillar here somehow. So it should work, and if, like I said, if it rocks around a bit, I'll just pin it to the shed anyway. So see what happens. I'll keep the front as tight as I can. A few of these offcuts, so even something like that, as long as it clears the sink, it's not really going to matter. First thing we'll do, we'll make a plate to go over the top of that. Couldn't find a piece of flat plate, so I just chopped a piece of angle in halves, and I'm just going to weld that together, and that'll be the plate. And I'll drill 4 holes in it, and that can be our base plate, and then we'll weld all the arms off of that. Okay, we just made this plate up, drilled some holes in it. And we're going to bolt this down and then we can weld these legs on. Yeah, okay, so we've got some pretty wild and wonderful angles happening here. What I'm doing is actually just putting these up underneath onto the frame and then down to that main center stand, cutting out notches so I can line things up and whatever. And I'm putting a bit of pressure on it and then tack welding it. And I'll do that all round and then we'll weld it properly. I am expecting some headaches with this. It may sag here and there. It's a bit of an experiment at this stage. Worst comes to worst, I'll chop it all off and I'll just put 4 legs on like a normal table with adjustable feet. But if I can get this to work, it might look a bit more tidy. So all I'm doing at the moment is just worried about getting the back of this level and slightly higher to the right hand side. And then I'm just welding, tack welding on a bar enough so it clears the sink onto there. That looks rough as guts, but we'll tidy all that up. And then from here all the way up to there, just tacked on at this stage, and then I can unbolt all this later and weld it properly in the shed. So now I've got to make one that goes from this corner up to here. So I'm happy with the back. What I've done now is I've removed that block that was holding the whole thing up, and because I've got these arms on the back now where that's level, what I can do now is just chop the front corners of each one with a wedge, and now I can actually just fine tune slope that way as well as this way on both sides. And once I'm happy with that, then I'll put another bar up from there to each corner. Hopefully that'll hold it. So far it's actually fairly stable. I thought it might wobble around a bit more. I probably will pin it to the shed anyway, just because I can, to make it a bit stronger. But I think this might actually work. It's hard to say until I get the 4th leg on. Right, I've currently got 3 legs tacked on. It's not the prettiest, but it's on there, and it's surprisingly pretty stable. So the annoying part is that is the only bit of scrap metal steel I've got left, and I need to go a little bit further, so I'm probably going to have to go in town and buy some, or try and join a heap together, which is going to look a bit sketchy. So either way, so it's missing the sink literally by millimetres there, and this is going to be a headache, isn't it? What's going to happen there? Maybe we'll have to take this one out yet. Right, I found another offcut. I'm just going to weld the 2 together. That's a different thickness, but it won't really matter. So we'll just tack them together, and then I've got the extra arm, save me driving into town and get another piece. Alright, that is it for one night. So welded an extension onto there. They're all tacked onto there. We'll even put a spot where I'm going to bolt it to the shed. Put 3 of those on. And that is pretty much it. So tomorrow I'll unbolt it and we'll weld it properly. Surprisingly level, and it's very stable, so it should be good. So it'll look nice and clean underneath. Alright, I'll see you guys in the morning.